Hi, I'm Charlie Chapman, a developer advocate here at RevenueCat. We just released the first beta of RevenueCat Paywalls v2, our ground-up overhaul of our paywall UI framework. I released a separate video that kind of goes over in higher level what this feature is and kind of where we're trying to take it. But in this video, I wanted to just actually dive into the editor and show you how it works. Keep in mind that this is definitely a beta. It's ready for you to try out, but don't be surprised if things look a little bit different for you. By the time you're watching this, we've probably already integrated some feedback from users. That's really a big part of why we're pushing this out there. So don't be surprised to see changes coming through quickly. Okay, so without further ado, let's jump into the RevenueCat dashboard. Okay, so we're here in the RevenueCat dashboard. We're on a project called Paw Plus. It's one we've used for a bunch of tutorials in the past. And let's go down and look at the offerings here. So I have a default offering, and this default offering has an annual plan and a monthly plan, and there's a paywall configured for it already. This is using our old V1 version of paywalls. So if we click on it, you'll see the old V1 paywall editor. In this editor, you could choose from a series of templates. We had 6. And once you chose one, you could make a whole bunch of customizations to it. But ultimately, it was always going to be, a picture at the top. There's text here, list of features. Your products are going to be dynamic, and then you could change a bunch of colors and everything. And that was pretty much the customizations that you had. Really, really easy to make, but not a whole lot of flexibility, other than making it fit with your theme. If we jump over into Xcode, don't worry, we're not going to get in the weeds on the code here, but just a reminder for how it worked in V1. I'm in this project in Xcode, and this is the settings view. So what you would do is you would import RevenueCat UI, and then in this example, I have a button, and all that button does is toggle this Boolean value is presenting paywall. And then down here, I showed a sheet based on whether is presenting paywall is true. And then I rendered this component coming from RevenueCat UI, the paywall view component. And this is ultimately what renders the paywall. So if we run that real quick, here's our app. We go into settings, and then I click on that button, and then boom, there's our paywall. Pretty straightforward. Again, if you've used Paywalls V1, you've already seen how this works. This is literally all I have to show you in code, because Paywalls V2 works exactly the same way. If you're using Paywalls V1, you don't really need to do anything. You can just use your existing code. The only caveat to that is if you're using the footer views from Paywalls V1, we haven't implemented that for Paywalls V2 yet. Those aren't supported, so at least in this beta. So keep that in mind. But if you're not using the footer views, then you're already good to go with Paywalls V2. You don't have to change anything in your code. Pretty sweet. So without further ado, let's actually look at how Paywalls V2 works. So if we go back out here and go into our offerings, I've already created a new offering that we can use for Paywalls V2. Let's go ahead and make that the default, because that's what we're ultimately going to want to use here. So that's the default. And then let's look at how this paywall is set up. So just like our other one, there's a monthly product on here, and the monthly product does not have a trial. And then I have an annual product, and the annual product has a 1-week free trial. I've already set up these products in App Store Connect, and everything's wired up correctly. So we're not going to go through all that detail in this tutorial, but we have our docs and other videos you can watch that will walk you through that process. But right now there's not a paywall for this. So let's look at how to add that. You could click this button up here, but I'm going to go to our paywalls section here, and you'll see there's this new big banner that prompts you to create a paywall. And if you click on that, it's going to ask which offering you want to connect that paywall to. And this will only show paywalls that don't already have an offering, or they'll only show offerings that don't already have a paywall created for them. So here you can see there's Paywalls V2, which is the offering that I showed you a second ago. And then there's also this other offer that I'd created in the past that I never created a paywall for. So we're going to go ahead and pick Paywalls V2 and then hit add. This looks just like before. There's a bunch of templates, but even right off the bat, you can see there are 6, 9, 10 templates. So there's already 10 templates. We already have more than we had in the past. And a little peek behind the curtain, creating these templates with this new system is way easier for us, which means that we'll be able to create a lot more of them a lot quicker in the future. So that's exciting. Now, the other thing that's different about this is there's this button up here to start from scratch. And that's because unlike Paywalls V1, where everything was a template and then you could make some customizations to it, in Paywalls V2, you can completely build a paywall from scratch if you want. And the templates are actually just pre-configured paywalls for you. But if you wanted to, you could delete everything from it and start over even from there. So that's kind of the first sign. So if you wanted to start from scratch, you could start from scratch. But we're going to go ahead and just pick this first template and work from there. Okay, so this is the new WYSIWYG paywall editor. This is really where all the meat and potatoes are here. So as you can see, it looks quite a bit different than V1, and it's way more powerful. I'm excited to show you all this. So if you've used like modern design tools, this probably looks really familiar to you, and it works really similarly to those as well. So right here in the center, you'll see the new preview. I have a trackpad connected. I can zoom in and out. I can pan around. So you can kind of, work within that. There's also, I can switch between light and dark mode. This is for localization. We'll look at that here in a little bit, but that's one's pretty cool. And then there's some preview settings. These are actually pretty similar to in V1, where you can make your preview data show preview variable values, as well as like set it to have introductory offer as if the user is eligible for an introductory offer. So you can test out how that works. Again, we'll look at how this works here in a second too. And then down at the bottom, you can see we have a preview for tablets. So this is kind of what it would look like on a tablet. This template and how I have it set up isn't exactly the most pretty, but there you go. And then you can also preview landscape mode. Now, this obviously looks super weird, but it's a good way to show you that you can scroll within this preview as well, which is definitely handy depending on the type of design that you're doing. So let's go ahead and switch this back to kind of a standard portrait here. And then let's look over here on the left. So this is the components panel. And this looks really similar to a lot of design tools. It's really a bunch of layers. And these layers are what's actually rendered in your paywall. Each of these you can, minimize so you can like kind of see a little bit clearer. And you see there's this handlebar over here, and that's because you can drag the different pieces around. So if I click on this stack, you'll see it highlights that stack in the editor. You can also click directly in the preview to select those objects as well. And let's see, if we look at like this first stack, maybe the second stack, I can like use this and drag to move my text, my description text above my title. Or if I wanted to, I could completely delete, that, and it's not there at all anymore. If I want to get that back, we don't have undo yet. Again, this is an early beta, but I can just create a new one. And that's because you can just add new components anytime you want to. So inside of this stack, which we'll look at how stacks work here in a second, I can hit this plus button. And now I can see all the components that we have in this initial beta. This is going to be a growing list. But for right now, these are the components that you have. And for this one, I just want to do a simple text component. So I'm going to add that. And it's going to put it at the bottom of my stack. You can see it down here. So I'm just going to grab that and move it up. Boom. So now it's back underneath there. And let's take this opportunity to look at the text properties. Or not text properties, but the properties panel. In this case, I have a text component selected. You notice if I start clicking around on different types of components that this properties panel changes based on which type of component I have selected, which makes sense. In this case, I've selected this text component. So here you have a whole bunch of different options. So the obvious one is the text field itself. So I can just put like, this is a description of my subscription product, something like that. And you have a whole bunch of formatting options inside of here. So I can make this bold, I can make this italic, make this strike through. If I wanted to, I could add a link. So I could go to, HTTPS google.com. And now that's going to be a link that's actually tappable. I want to take that out though. And so that's how, and that's the text field. If you click this button over here, you'll get a whole bunch of different options for formatting your text. So I can change the alignment to make it center aligned or right aligned. It makes more sense if I have, a bunch of extra text here. Let's get rid of that though. I can change the font weight overall to make it, bold, semi-bold, regular. I can change the color. And then you can change the font size. Now these are dynamic font size values. So if I select body medium like I do right now, if the user changes their default font size on their OS, then our font will grow with it. And then you can also do a couple more advanced things, like I could change what the text is based on whether or not the user and the product they have selected is eligible for a trial or an introductory offer. You can set those both for iOS or Google Play Store separately here. I'm not going to do that in this case though. So this is what a text component looks like. But I think this is a good opportunity also then to look at how localization works. So right now I'm just doing this in English, but what if I want to make this different for different languages? And that is where you come over here to our language settings. So right now I'm set in English and there's only English as an option, but I can click this Manage Localization button. First I need to save my changes. And now I'm in our new localization editor. This right here is going to be a CSV, although it doesn't really look like it because there's only one column currently. But this represents all of the different text copy that I have in my app or in my paywall. And right now they're all in English. So I can add another locale. So let's do, check. And now I get another column. Now it's looking a little more like a traditional, CSV. And I can set different copy in here. I don't know how to speak or write. Check. But this is now going to be all of my localizations for check. And whenever I'm clicked inside of here, the preview is going to switch over to show the check locale. And everywhere where you don't have something, it's going to say, please add text to make it a little clear for you. And if I click back over here, you switch back over to the English version. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that because I'm not going to fill all that out. So this is like a much nicer editing tool for localizations. And what's cool is you can export out your English as a CSV and send that over to a translator or something like that. And they can fill out the translations inside of that CSV and then send it back to you. And you can import that into here and it'll automatically kind of suck it all in. So that's a really cool, quick way to localize your paywall. Let's go ahead and go back. We can save that. All right, so now we're back in our paywall editor. Let's look at how we can make some more like advanced changes to the paywall itself. So right now I have, a description or a title and a description underneath this thing, but I kind of want to put like a list of features that represent the thing that you'll unlock with the subscription. So the best way to do that is to use a stack. So you can see we have a stack here, but I actually want to put a stack inside of the stack. So if I hit plus and I hit stack and hit add, it's going to add a new stack at the bottom. I'm going to pull that up. So now you can see it's going to render right inside of here. And this stack is going to represent each one of our features. And for each feature, I want there to be a little icon and then the text that represents what that feature unlocks right next to it. And so for each one of those, I'm going to use another stack. But this stack, I want it to render horizontally instead of putting them stacked on top of each other. So I'm going to click on this stack, I'm going to hit plus, and then I'm going to add another stack. All right, so inside of the secondary stack, I'm going to hit plus, and we're going to add an icon component. And an icon component, it's kind of like an image, but we have a bunch of icons that you can pick from. So you can see there's a whole bunch of options in here. Let's just pick kind of one at random. How about this blur thing? And we'll get a preview that'll load here in a second. All right, there you go. And you can change the color. Let's maybe make that like red or something like that. And change the size to like 25 by 25. There you go. So it's a little bit smaller. Okay, and then I'm going to add inside of that same stack, now I'm going to add some text, and this is going to be what our the description of our feature. So I'm going to say like unlock all your favorite video content or something like that. Now you notice that these are rendering one on top of the other, which wasn't what I want. I want the icon, and then next to the icon is where I want the actual text to render. So we need to go to this stack right here that they're contained inside of, and go over to this axis property and switch it. You see how right now what's selected is the ones that are two rectangles on top of each other. We want them to be the two rectangles that are next to each other. That'll switch it to a horizontal stack. So you could also switch this to what's called a Z stack, where they stack on top of each other in Z axis space, but we're not going to mess with that here. So now you can see they're actually next to each other, but there's all this space in between, and that's the distribution. So if I change this distribution from space between to start, it'll push that over right next to it. Now, I don't like the way that this is kind of pushed up at the top, so I'm actually going to switch that as well. This is the alignment, and make it center aligned. There we go, that looks nice. Now, I do want some more padding in between these two, and there's two ways we could address that. So I could go to this icon, and I could go to the margin, and I could go to right, and I could add like 8 pixels or something like that. The other way to do it would be to go to the stack itself and look at the child spacing, and that's going to affect all the spacing in between all of the elements of a stack. In this case, we only have 2, and I can say they should all have 8 pixels. It kind of depends on your design which one makes more sense. And there you go. So that looks pretty nice. I do think I want this stack. So I want this stack to have a little bit more spacing on top of it. So we'll go to its top and maybe give it like 16 pixels. There we go. Okay. So now it's starting to look a little more like what I was hoping for. And so if I want to make this a list of features, I can duplicate that and go to the second one and maybe pick a different icon. Sure. Accessible. Make this one blue. Yeah, something like that. And then, change this to hide all ads. And then, duplicate that one. Whoops. And duplicate that stack. And let's make this one, this is a long description so that Charlie can show text wrapping. And like this one, I don't like how that renders where it's center aligned. So maybe on this stack, I can make it, top aligned like that and duplicate here. And I'm duplicating a couple because what I want to show you is this is getting so long now that it's pushing our buttons to actually make the purchase off of the paywall, which doesn't seem ideal because you probably want your users to be making a purchase. Now I can scroll inside of here again, and your users will be able to too, but generally speaking, you don't want the purchase to be hidden from the user whenever they first see your paywall. So let's look at a way to solve that problem. So I want this stuff right here to always be visible. So that's where we're going to use a footer component. So let's minimize all those. So now I can add a new component, and I'm going to choose footer. And so now if we scroll onto the bottom, there's a new component down here called footer. And there's this little line to sort of indicate that something about this is different. And it didn't change anything. And that's because there's nothing in our footer yet at all. But let's grab let's see, this stack down here, the cancel anytime and restore purchases. So let's see what happens whenever I drag that inside of the footer. So now that is showing at the bottom just like before, but if I scroll up, it's still showing at the bottom. So it's kind of like stuck to the bottom and everything else scrolls under it. So I want that. I want our continue purchase button to also show in there. Yep. So now, that's always showing. And then I want these selector packages to also show. So let's grab the package list and drag that in as well. There we go. And obviously, you can change the padding and everything to make this look nicer, but I'm going to try and keep moving forward and not get stuck making this all look perfect right here because I just want to show you how this all works. But ultimately, this is kind of the best way to build a nice looking paywall where your purchase buttons are always visible. So let's talk about how these purchase buttons, these sort of specialized buttons, work. So to do that, I'm actually just going to delete these and we can kind of recreate them. So if we look inside of our footer here, and this package list and purchase button, I'm just going to delete them. Delete and delete. All right, so I'll just leave that there so that we kind of have something there all the time. So now let's add the different packages that users can pick from. So if I hit plus inside of the footer and look here at the package component and add one of those, let's drag it up. Whoops, I want it up above that stack. There we go. So this is what a package will look like by default. And right now there's just 2 text components inside of it, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. But ultimately, this right here is a selectable button where if a user taps on it, then they have selected it now. And then they can click on a purchase button, which is a component that you can add to actually initiate the purchase. So this first one typically is where you're going to put your title. So let's make this my monthly plan. And I'm just going to type it in there. And then for the second one, it's going to be the description, which is, or actually, let's make this look a little bit more obviously different. So let's make this like bold and the font size body large or something like that. There we go. And now for the second text in here, that's going to be the description that tells you what the actual price is for it. And so I could type in, $4.99 per month if I wanted to in here. But the problem is this only makes sense based on if that's my price currently that I have it set to, and also for the one locale, whether that's US or UK or whatever you currently are set to. So we want this to be dynamic. And that's where variables come in. And if you've used Paywall V1, this works the same as Paywalls V1. So I can click Add Variable here. And there's a whole bunch of different options I can choose from that are going to be dynamic based on a package. So if I hit price per period here, that's going to give me the variable that represents the price with the period of time that's kind of in there. You can do everything you want here. You can also, you can add your own texts around variables as well. To keep it simple, I'm just going to keep it kind of like that. Something I just realized I skipped over though is on this package itself, I need to tell it which package in RevenueCat it's actually supposed to represent. And so that is the top option up here. So I'm going to switch that, or I'm going to set that to the monthly package. And then I don't want this one to be selected by default because the one I want users to automatically be selected on is the annual plan. And we'll add that one here in a second. So I'm not going to have that selected by default. Okay, so if we go back down to here, this is our description text. And actually, I think this is pretty much good. The only thing that we haven't done yet is given it a different style based on whether or not the user has selected it. So if we go back to the package, the top level package component, at the top, there's this default and selected state. So right now, this is the default state whenever it's not a selected package. So if I click on this, it'll switch everything over to the selected state. Right now, I haven't changed anything, so let's go ahead and do that. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to change the background color. And actually, let's do a gradient. You know what? I actually kind of like that. So we'll just leave it there. So this is like it's dark blackish on the far left. And then on the right, it's this kind of, I don't know, aqua-ish color. But now you can't read my text. So I can go to each one of these text components. And you'll notice whenever I'm selecting a text component inside of a package, it also has this default and selected state at the top. And so whenever I'm in a selected state, I want the text color to be white instead of black. So I can do that there and do the same thing for the description. There we go. All right, so this is the default state, and then whenever I tap on it, it'll switch over to looking like this. Pretty interesting. Okay, so this is our monthly package, but we also want the annual one. So I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate that and put it at the bottom. So let's drag it up right there. Ooh, up one more. There we go. Oh, and you can see this is actually, I have a product embedded in, or package embedded in a package. So if that happens, you can just drag it to the left and it'll push it back out. So now I have these two packages, and right now both of them represent monthly. So let's click on the second one and switch the package to annual. And then the selected by default, I do want that checked now. So that's going to be the default package that's selected. And it's also going to have the same selected state and default state. And right now it has the same text. For the description or the title text, we need to change that since we manually did that. I just realized I spelled that wrong. So let's change that to annual. Let's change this to not be monthly. There we go. Yeah, so now we have this annual plan. And then if we go to the text here, because we're using the variable, that will actually automatically be correct for us because the variable is going to be injected based on the package details itself. But there's one thing that's different about the annual plan than the monthly plan, and that was that the annual plan has a free trial. And so I want this to represent whenever the user is eligible for a trial, I want it to show that they can get a trial if they have this plan. And so in this text field for an introductory offer, I can hit plus, and here I can say try free for, and then we're going to find a variable to figure out what the length of the trial is. So the ones that say offer, so that's the offer price. I know that mine's free, so I just have that hard coded, but you can make that more dynamic if you wanted to. But what I want is the offer period. So it's going to be try free for period. Then we're going to put in the price per period just like before. So I want this to say like try free for actually this is the offer period, but it doesn't have the units. So actually what I'm going to do here, let's delete that. I'm going to do the offer period in days. I want it to be always in days. So that's the offer period in days. And then I can just put days. So it's going to be try free for 7 days. Then, $5.99 per week or whatever the actual price is once they convert over from the trial. But you notice that our preview doesn't show that. And that's because our preview by default shows the default text field value. So what you want to do here is go to your preview settings, and then you can click this introductory offer content, and it'll switch everything over to assume that the user has an introductory offer eligible. So if I click on that, you'll see now it says try free for 7 days, then $99 a week. And that's exactly what we want. So now we have these two things. Now you notice that these are stacked on top of each other instead of being side by side like the other one. I like the side by side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this first package, and we're going to embed that in a stack and set this stack to be a horizontal stack like we talked about earlier. And then I'm going to drag this package into that stack as well. And now, boom, look at that, side by side. And this padding is not going to be good. I could sit here and make this look nicer all day, but you guys don't want to watch me do that. So I'm going to leave it at that. So now we have 2 packages, but if a user selects one of these packages, that's it. It's not going to actually initiate a purchase because all they've done is select it. They can switch back and forth between the two. So we need to add a purchase button. So inside of the footer, I'm going to hit plus again. And now I'm going to add a purchase button. And the purchase button is just a special type of component that initiates a purchase of whatever package happens to be selected at that time. So let's drag that up above our stack. And we can make this a different color. So maybe make it like green for money. And the text is white. I think that's fine. But the text is not centered. So let's change the alignment. There we go. All right, cool. So this, because you're using the purchase button, it's already set up for you. So this will actually just work as it is. But let's obviously make this text make some more sense. So I want the text by default to just say continue. But this is another case where I'd like the button to show something to represent if the user is eligible for a trial. And so I can do the same thing here. The text field for introductory offer, I could say try free, then subscribe. And just like before, if I hit introductory offer, you'll see the version that's the introductory version of that button. Cool. So that is starting to look a little bit more like a paywall, right? The only other kind of advanced thing that I want to show here is regular buttons. I don't think I've shown that at all yet. So this button right here, if I were to just go to add one, you can see there's this button component. That's what this button down here is for. And so if you go into there, this one has text in it just like a normal piece of text. But if I click on the button itself, you have a couple different options. So there's this action field up here. And if you click on that, right now I have it set to restore purchases. So if the user clicks on it, it will just initiate a restore of their purchases, which is really useful on a paywall. But you can also choose between navigating to and navigating back. Navigating back literally will just dismiss your view. So in your app, it'll just navigate you back to wherever you came from. Navigate to is a little bit more interesting. So whenever you do navigate to, you get some more options here. So you can navigate a user to the Customer Center, which is another RevenueCat UI product. And that's just a way, like a support page to help users manage their subscription or something. So you can navigate some way straight to that. And then these two right here will probably be gone by the time you're watching this video because they don't necessarily make sense to be separate anymore. The other one that you're going to want here is URL. And so if you select URL, you can put any URL that you want and send users to it, either using the in-app browser or bouncing them out to an external browser. But you can also put deep links to different parts of your app in here as well. And the reason these two are going away is because they're also make more sense as a URL. So you can put a URL to your privacy policy or a URL to your terms of service directly in this URL option. Yeah, so that's how the button works. Let's switch this back to restore purchases. Cool. Yeah, so I think this pretty much covers the gist of how this all works. So let's save this. And there's something a little bit different than V1 that you'll already notice, which is I hit save, but there's this separate publish paywall button. And that's because Paywalls V2 supports the concept of drafts. So if I go out of here now, I've saved it, but I'm in the paywalls section right now, and I look at the published area, there is no Paywalls V2 paywalls that have been published. And that's because I never actually hit publish, which means it's not out in production yet. If I go to this inactive tab, you'll see it's now sitting in there. And if I hit publish, now whenever I go back out, it'll be sitting here in the published section. And this is really nice for being able to make changes to your paywalls without immediately pushing those updates out to your users. So if I go to this published paywall now and I change this title to this is some other text and I hit save, me hitting save does not mean that users are going to start seeing that. I have to hit publish for that. If I want to see the version that users can see, I can go to this preview drop-down button here, and I can switch over to the publish version. This is a read-only version of the paywall, but it's going to show what's actually live out there. And then I can go back to the draft version. You can also just discard whatever you have in your drafts if you change your mind and you don't want to push it out there. But if I go back over here, whenever I hit publish, now that's what's actually going to show to my users. Speaking of showing it to your users, this should just work. I've switched my offering to use the new Paywalls V2 offering, and that offering is using this paywall. And so without making any code changes at all, whenever I jump over into my simulator here, If I close it and reopen it and go to settings and hit upgrade to pro, look at that. We have our Paywall V2 paywall in here. And this is already something that we could not have made with the old paywalls editor. Obviously my colors and copy and a whole bunch of stuff here are not very pretty, but it works. The annual plan is selected by default, like I said. If I click on the monthly plan, this one's now selected. You notice that my continue button changed from try free then subscribe to just continue. If I was a user that had already used a trial, then this copy would no longer show try free. Oh, I set that for, apparently my trial is actually set for a full year whenever I was testing. That's funny. But this copy would show, it would just show the price because they're no longer eligible, and this would just say continue, like we were talking about before. And then if I hit continue, based on what I have selected, it's going to give me the option to actually subscribe to that product. So that was the monthly one. If I switch to annual, hit subscribe, now it's going to show the annual one. So yeah, and all of this text renders below the footer view. And of course I can close it out just like that. So there you go. That's Paywalls V2. We're unbelievably excited to get this out there. Like I already said, this is very much a beta. We have a lot that we still want to do with it. It's early days, but you guys can play with it right now. You can go into your dashboard, and even if you don't want to put this in your app or actually use it, you can start trying to make paywalls and start sending us feedback for changes that you would like to see us make or features you'd like to see us add. Now, I mean, we're very actively working on this. We're going to be working on this hard for quite a while, but at these early stages, there's a lot of opportunity to get your feedback in and kind of shape the product to make more sense for you, because ultimately that's who we're doing this for. So there you go. We're really excited to see what you do with this, and we really would want to hear what you think. So for all the information about Paywalls V2 or anything else RevenueCat, you can go to RevenueCat.com.